I still can't believe it all happened to me. Sitting here now, writing this story, my heart feels so warm. I want to share it because it truly changed my life, and maybe it will help someone else not to give up when it feels like the whole world is against them. It all started with that family dinner. Oh God, how I didn't want to go. But Mom begged. Aunt Valerie was visiting from Chicago. We hadn't seen her in ages. It would be a shame to miss it. So I went. Of course. I figured no big deal. I'd sit for an hour, eat some of Mom's homemade pies, listen to the family news, and head home. But it turned out completely different. The thing is, I was working as a florist back then. Yep, arranging flowers, making bouquets, in a small shop on the outskirts of town. The salary, let's be honest, wasn't great, but I adored it. I ran to work every morning like it was a holiday. Roses, chrysanthemums, eustomas, that was my world. I could spend hours creating an arrangement, forgetting about everything else, but my relatives didn't understand it. At all. I remember walking into Aunt Valerie's apartment like it was yesterday. It was packed. You couldn't move. Aunt Gail was there from New York with her son Andrew. He was working for some big company back then. Just bought a new car. Uncle Pete and his wife, their daughter Cindy, she'd gotten a job as a bank teller. Cousins, second cousins, the whole family. And everyone seemed so important, so successful. Gail in a new fur coat, Cindy waving around the latest iPhone, Andrew talking about his salary, and me in a simple dress with a purse I'd bought on sale a year earlier. At first everything was fine. We greeted each other, hugged, sat down at the table. Mom brought her famous meatloaf. Aunt Valerie made potato salad. The conversation turned to work as usual at these gatherings. And our Andrew just got a promotion, Aunt Gail announced proudly. He's in charge of a whole department now. Way to go. The others clapped, and our Cindy became a senior teller at the bank, chimed in another aunt. Great salary, bonuses every month. I sat there listening, smiling. I was happy for them truly, but I felt it any minute now. It would be my turn, and sure enough. And you, Lena, how are things? Aunt Valerie turned to me. Where are you working? I work as a florist, I answered honestly, in a flower shop. And then it started. First, an awkward silence hung in the air. You know the kind. Then someone snorted, and then, a florist? Aunt Gail repeated, her voice dripping with condescension. That's, well, selling flowers? Not selling, creating arrangements, I tried to explain. Wedding bouquets, event decor. Oh, right. Gail waved her hand dismissively. Well, that's not serious. It's just temporary, right? And Uncle Pete actually laughed out loud. Flowers. Oh, boy. And what about the salary? Probably peanuts, huh? I felt my cheeks burn. To be honest, the salary really wasn't much. About $500 a month. Back then, that wasn't a lot of money, especially for our town. But it was enough. I rented a one-bedroom apartment, bought groceries, clothes. No luxury, of course, but I lived decently. Lena, honey, my cousin Cindy interjected, haven't you thought about something more? Well, promising, like, I work at the bank, I could put in a good word. They'd take you as a teller, then maybe a promotion. Or come to our firm, Andrew jumped in. Start as a receptionist, see how it goes. The salary would be way better right away. Thanks, I answered as calmly as I could. But I like my job. You like it? Aunt Valerie sounded surprised. Lena, honey, what kind of future is that? Flowers. That's not serious. You're already 28. It's time to think about a career. Think about a family, Mom added. You won't get married arranging flowers. That's when it really hurt, because I was actually planning to get married. I'd even started looking at dresses. They just didn't know. The thing was, 6 months earlier, I'd met an amazing man. His name was Daniel. Guess where we met? In my own shop. He came in to order a bouquet for his mom's birthday. And he looked so adorably lost standing in front of the display. He asked, what kind of flowers do moms like? I laughed and said, well, what's your mom like? And he spent a whole hour telling me about his mom, how she bakes pies, putters in her garden, babysits her grandkids. I listened and thought, oh my God, he's such a good guy, because not every man talks about his mom so tenderly, you know? In the end, we put together a gorgeous bouquet of white roses and pink gerbera daisies. His mom was thrilled, he told me later. And a week later, he came back for a bouquet for a colleague who was leaving. Then again for his sister's housewarming. And then he confessed that he didn't really need the flowers that much. He just wanted to see me. We'd been dating for 6 months, and I was happier than ever. Dan turned out to be an incredible person. Kind, attentive, with a great sense of humor. He worked as a programmer for a big IT company. He didn't brag about it, didn't show off. He just worked and enjoyed it. And he understood my love for flowers. More than that, he admired it. He said I had a magic touch, that I created beauty in this world. He could listen for hours to me talk about how to combine shades, which flowers suit which occasion. But I hadn't told my relatives about him. I was shy for some reason. Maybe afraid of jinxing it? Or maybe I just wanted to keep that happiness to myself a little longer. So there I was, sitting at that table, while they all gave me unsolicited advice on how to live my life. Lena, honey, why are you so stubborn? Aunt Gail was starting to get irritated. The flower business isn't a real profession. It's a hobby at best. An expensive hobby, Uncle Pete added. And what's the point? No decent money, no social standing, no husband, Mom sighed. And no decent guy will look twice at someone like that, Andrew said, immediately getting an elbow in the ribs from his wife. What? It's the truth. Men want successful women. With careers, with money. Not all men are like that, I said quietly. All of them. All of them. Uncle Pete waved his hands dismissively. I'm a man, I know. Who needs a florist wife? One who makes peanuts and plays with little bouquets all day. I listened and listened to this, and tears welled up in my throat. Not even from hurt, but from helplessness. How could I explain to them that work isn't just about money? That when you do what you love, every day turns into a celebration? That I wake up smiling because I know I'll create beauty again today? And the Petersons' daughter, Aunt Valerie, continued. She studied economics, now works in the city administration. Great salary, rich husband. They built a house. And bought a car, Cindy added, an import. And Arlena is still playing with flowers. Mom shook her head sadly. When will she come to her senses? I was about to get up and leave. Honestly, I couldn't take it anymore. But then my phone rang. Dan. Hey, Sunshine, I heard his voice. How's it going? Miss me? A little, I whispered, stepping aside. Listen, how about I pick you up? We can go somewhere. Get some ice cream. I looked at my watch. It was only 7 in the evening, but my relatives were clearly settling in for the night. Dan, really? That would be great, I said, relieved. I'm so ready to leave. Of course. Text me the address. I'll be there in half an hour. I went back to the table. Everyone looked at me curiously. Who was that? Mom asked. Dan. My friend. He's picking me up. Dan? Who? Aunt Valerie sounded surprised. You said you were single. I never said I was single. I just didn't mention him. Oh, Aunt Gail drawled knowingly. Well, I see. Probably some. Flower guy? They all laughed. I felt even worse. No, I answered curtly. He's a programmer. A programmer. Andrew perked up. Where does he work? In IT. What company? He pressed. I told him. Andrew suddenly fell silent and stared at me. Digital Solutions? He asked. Yes. No way. What's his last name? Morrison. Andrew paled. Daniel Morrison? The one who heads the development department? Yeah. Why? Nothing. Nothing, he mumbled. But I could see something was off. Andrew got really nervous, started constantly checking his phone. The others continued. Well, programmer is better than florist, Aunt Valerie said. At least he's not playing with flowers. How much does he make? I don't know, I answered honestly. We don't talk about money. They laughed again. You don't talk. Aunt Gail snorted. Meaning he makes peanuts. Otherwise he'd brag. Dan isn't the bragging type, I said. Not the type, Cindy nodded knowingly, probably embarrassed. Well, whatever. At least there's someone. We were starting to think you'd end up an old maid. Just then, a car pulled up and braked sharply outside. I looked out the window and froze. Dan hadn't come in his usual car, but in some fancy import, black, shiny, clearly expensive. Well, here he is, I said. Where? Everyone rushed to the window, and then the funniest part started. My Dan got out of the car. But he looked different. Not like usual. An expensive suit, watch gleaming, his whole posture was different. More confident somehow. I went downstairs to meet him. Hi, sunshine. He hugged me. Miss me? So much. I pressed against him. Where'd the car come from? This. He grinned. Company car. Decided to make a splash. Dan, would you mind coming up? Meet everyone? All the relatives are here. It feels rude not to. He looked at me closely. Did something happen? No, just... I didn't know how to explain. Lena, he took my hands. If you're uncomfortable, we can just leave. You don't have to. No, I want you to come up. Really? All right then. He smiled. We walked up the stairs and I was incredibly nervous. What if they started criticizing him too? What if they said something hurtful? But when we walked into the apartment, something amazing happened. Everyone immediately fell silent. They just sat there, mouths agape, staring at Dan. He smiled and said, "Good evening. Daniel Morrison, very nice to meet you all." Come in, Aunt Valerie fluttered nervously. Sit down at the table, thank you, but we won't stay long. Dan answered politely. I just wanted to meet Lena's family. She speaks so warmly about you. Oh, nonsense. Mom waved her hands. What family? We're just, well, simple folks. But Lena told me she has the best family in the world. Dan smiled. I watched this and couldn't understand what was happening. The same people who 5 minutes ago were lecturing me on life suddenly became so obsequious, smiling, nodding, offering tea. And you, young man? Where do you work? Aunt Gail asked in a completely different tone. In IT, Dan answered modestly. Programming. Oh, she drawled, I see. That's very promising these days. Yeah, plenty of work, he agreed, and the salary. If it's not a secret. Cindy started, but Dan interrupted. I don't really like talking about work. Better tell me about yourselves. Lena said you're from Chicago, Aunt Valerie. And off it went. Aunt Valerie started talking about Chicago, how wonderful it was there. The others joined in, everyone talking about their own thing, all so pleased, so happy. And Andrew sat there pale and silent. I noticed he tried to say something a few times, but then changed his mind. Dan, he finally addressed my boyfriend. What specific company do you work for? Digital Solutions, Dan answered. Which department? Development. And your position? Dan looked at him closely. Why do you ask? Oh, just curious. Andrew hesitated. I manage the department, Dan said calmly. The silence that followed was so thick you could hear the clock ticking. Andrew went completely white. You're Daniel Morrison? He whispered. Yes, Dan looked surprised. Do we know each other? I'm Andrew Smirnoff. From sales. Dan frowned, trying to remember, then his face cleared. Yes. Smirnoff. Of course I remember. You pitched that automation project last month. Yes. Andrew nodded rapidly. Exactly. Good project. We approved it, by the way. Implementation starts next week. Andrew swallowed hard. Thank you. Mr. Morrison? Cut out the formalities. Dan laughed. We're practically family now. And then it finally dawned on everyone. Aunt Gail's eyes widened, then she started nodding her head rapidly. Cindy's mouth hung open. Uncle Pete coughed and started studying the ceiling. And Mom suddenly burst into tears. Mommy, what's wrong? I was scared. Oh, nothing, honey, nothing. She wiped her tears. I'm just happy for you. Lena never told us about you, Aunt Valerie said. We had no idea. What's to tell? Dan shrugged. Just a regular guy. Work, live. Regular? Cindy exclaimed. You're the boss. Yeah, but that doesn't make me better than anyone, Dan countered. Everyone has their own work, their own talents. Take Lena, for example. She creates such beauty. I couldn't do that. Beauty? Aunt Gail didn't understand. Well, yes, she's a florist. It's a real art. Dan's voice held genuine admiration. You should see what she creates. I sometimes go to her shop just to admire her work. She has a magic touch. I looked at my relatives' faces and couldn't believe my eyes. The same people who half an hour ago called my work not serious were now nodding and agreeing. Yes, yes, Aunt Valerie rushed to confirm. We always said Lena had talent. Always, Cindy chimed in. It was obvious since she was little. Magic touch, Uncle Pete agreed. I couldn't help it and snorted. Dan looked at me, surprised. What's wrong? He asked quietly. I'll tell you later, I whispered. Mr. Morrison, Andrew addressed him, could I? If it's not too much trouble, take a photo with you? For my wife? She won't believe I met you. Of course. Dan smiled. But please, no Mr. Morrison. Just Dan. They took a picture. Then everyone wanted pictures. Then came the questions about work, the company, future plans. I sat and watched this scene, and it felt so strange. On one hand, it was good they finally saw I wasn't such a failure. On the other hand, it was hurtful. Did I need a successful man to bring respect? Lena, Dan leaned towards me. Maybe we should go. You seem sad. Yeah, let's go, I agreed. We started saying goodbye, and then it began. Lena, honey, Aunt Valerie hugged me. Forgive us, silly old women. We only said those things out of love. Of course, forgive us, Mom joined in. We were just worried about you. We always knew you were special, Uncle Pete added, and your work is wonderful. Cindy nodded. So creative. Dan stood nearby, completely bewildered, and I didn't know what to feel. Anger, hurt, or joy at finally hearing kind words. We walked down to the car. Dan opened the door for me, got in the driver's seat. What happened back there? He asked once we drove off. You're so pale. And I told him. Everything. How they criticized my job. How they called me a failure, said I'd never get married. Dan listened in silence. Then he pulled the car over to the side of the road, turned to me. My sunshine. He took my hands in his. I'm so sorry you had to listen to that. It's okay. I tried to smile. I'm used to it. Used to it. Have they talked like that before? Not exactly like that, but yeah. They think I'm wasting my time, that I should go work in a bank or some office. Good Lord, Dan shook his head. And I thought you had such a close family. We are close. But they don't understand me. Lena, he looked me in the eyes. Do you understand they only changed their minds because they found out about my job? I do. And how do you feel about that? I thought about it. Honestly, I didn't know. On one hand, it was nice to finally hear I was doing well. On the other hand, I knew that if Dan had been, say, a janitor instead of an IT department head, they would still be pitying me. You know, I finally said, I guess I don't care. The main thing is that you understand me. I understand and I admire you, he said seriously. You make the world more beautiful, Lena. That's far more important than any salary. We drove on. Dan took me to our favorite cafe. It was quiet, cozy, with pleasant music playing. Listen, he said once we were settled at our table. Why didn't you tell me about your family before? I could have. Could have what? Well, talk to them. Explained. Dan, I shook my head. You understand they changed their minds not because you explained something. They were just scared they'd insulted their relative's boss. He was silent for a moment. Yeah, you're right. It seems kind of stupid. Not stupid. Human. People are wired to respect strength and success. It's normal. But it's not fair. Fair or not?" I shrugged. Life is rarely fair. We sat, drank coffee, talked, and gradually my mood improved. After all, what had really changed? Nothing. I still worked as a florist and adored my job. I still had my wonderful man who understood and supported me. And my relatives had finally stopped pitying me. Well, that was even good. "Lena," Dan suddenly said, "let's get married." I choked on my coffee. "What? Get married? I'm serious." "Dan, are you crazy? We've only been dating 6 months." "So? I know you're the one. What about you?" I looked at him and didn't know what to say. Of course, I felt he was special too. And I'd thought about marriage, but so suddenly. "I'm not ready yet," I admitted honestly. "When will you be ready?" "I don't know. Maybe in another 6 months." "Okay," he nodded. "I'll wait." And in that moment, I knew I really did want to marry him. Not because he was successful or wealthy, but because he accepted me exactly as I was. He didn't try to change me, didn't criticize my job, didn't push me to find something more promising. After that incident, a lot changed. My relatives treated me completely differently. Mom stopped sighing when my job came up. Aunt Valerie asked about my arrangements every time she called, and Cindy even asked me to do the flowers for her friend's wedding. But the most interesting thing? I realized I didn't care about their opinion anymore. Not at all. Before, every sideways comment cut deep, but now they could say whatever they wanted, because I'd found someone who saw me, not my salary. 3 months later, something even more amazing happened. Dan stopped by my shop one evening. I was closing up, putting away my tools. He stood in the doorway with a strange smile. "What happened?" I asked. "You look suspicious." "Lena," he said, "remember you told me about your dream?" "What dream?" The one about opening your own big shop with workshops, floristry courses." Of course I remembered. I told him once I dreamed of my own business, not a little shop on the outskirts, but a real floral design center, where people came not just to buy bouquets, but to learn, to get inspired. "I remember," I said. "Why?" "Well, I have a proposal." He pulled some papers from his pocket. "I found a space. Downtown. First floor, big windows, everything you dreamed of." I took the papers and started reading. A lease agreement. In my name. "Dan, what are you doing?" My hands were shaking. "This is crazy. I don't have that kind of money." "But I do," he said calmly. "Consider it an investment in talent." "What kind of investment?" "Dan, I can't accept this." "You can. And you will, because I believe in you more than you believe in yourself." And he was right. A month later, we opened Lena's floral workshop, a big, bright space, a separate area for workshops, a display window taking up a whole wall, a dream come true. Clients came right away. First acquaintances, then their friends, then complete strangers. Turns out many people didn't just want to buy flowers, they wanted something special, unique, created. Then the workshop started. Every weekend people came wanting to learn floristry. Young women, older ladies, even men sometimes. All so enthusiastic, so interested. After 6 months, I had to hire an assistant. 3 months later, another one. Business was booming. Then came a funny story. One Saturday, I was teaching a workshop on wedding arrangements. About 15 people came, mostly women, but a couple of men too, probably caring fiancés. I was explaining, demonstrating. Everyone was happy. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice. "Excuse me, is it too late to join?" I turned. It was Aunt Gail, with Andrew, both dressed up, notebooks ready. "Aunt Gail?" I couldn't believe my eyes. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, well," she looked embarrassed. "Andrew's getting married. We thought we'd make the bride's bouquet ourselves. Save money." Lies, of course. It wasn't about saving money. She was just curious about what her niece was doing. But I wasn't offended. On the contrary, I was pleased. I guided them through the whole workshop. Aunt Gail tried so hard, stuck her tongue out in concentration, adjusted every leaf 100 times. And Andrew was actually great. He made a beautiful arrangement. "Lena, honey," Aunt Gail said at the end, You know, this really is an art. I had no idea it was so complicated. Complicated, but interesting, I replied. Very interesting. Can we come to the next workshop? Of course they could. Aunt Gail became my regular client. She comes to classes every month without fail. Her apartment is half filled with her arrangements now. Her neighbors are jealous. In December, Dan proposed. For real. With a ring, flowers, a beautiful speech. Of course I said yes. What else could I do? We got married in the spring, and that's when I surprised my relatives. I did all the floral design myself. Completely free for the love of art. But I created magic. The hall turned into a floral paradise. Centerpieces on the tables, arches of roses, even the ceiling decorated with garlands of fresh flowers. Guests gasped, took pictures, admired everything. And my relatives strutted around like peacocks. They told everyone, our Lena created this beauty. She has such talent, she's an artist. We always knew she was special, Aunt Valerie told the guests. It was obvious since she was little. Magic touch. Uncle Pete confirmed, we always supported her. I listened and laughed. Well, fine. Let them think they always supported me. The main thing is they do now. After the wedding, life got even busier. The workshop thrived. We had so many orders we could barely keep up. We had to expand, rented another space, hired more staff. A year later, something truly incredible happened. A wedding planner from New York contacted me. She'd seen photos of my work online and wanted to collaborate. Lena, she said, you have an amazing style. Would you like to work with us? Our clients are willing to pay top dollar for exclusive decor. And you know what? I agreed. Not even for the money, but for the challenge. I wanted to try something new, something big. My first New York wedding was a real test. The bride was the daughter of a famous businessman, 300 guests, a banquet hall the size of a football field, and everyone wanted it to be like a fairy tale princess. I didn't sleep for a week developing the concept, then another week assembling the pieces. Dan helped hold materials, held the ladder while I hung ceiling garlands. And it worked. It was so beautiful, even I was surprised. The hall transformed into a magical garden. Fresh flowers everywhere, every arrangement a work of art. The guests were thrilled. The bride cried with happiness. Most importantly, everything got photographed and posted online. And things took off. Orders started coming in from New York, LA. Even overseas. I had to open a branch in the city, find partners in other locations. Now 5 years have passed since that memorable family dinner. And you know what's changed? Everything. And nothing. I still get up in the morning with joy because I'm going to a job I love. I can still spend hours creating another arrangement. I still get pleasure from every petal, every leaf. It's just that now there's more work, more money, more recognition. My relatives, of course, now think I'm a genius. Aunt Gail tells all her friends how she always believed in Lena's talent. Cindy asks my advice about everything. Uncle Pete proudly tells the neighbors his niece is a famous floral designer. And Andrew is now one of my best friends. He came to work for my company, handles all the technical stuff. Turns out he's a great guy. He was just stifled before, afraid to show his potential. But the most important thing beside me is still the same Dan, my husband, my best friend, my rock. Best. He still says I create beauty in the world, and he can still listen for hours to me talk about new rose varieties or floral trends. Recently we had a daughter, little Sophie. She's only 6 months old, but I already see her reaching for flowers. Maybe she'll be a florist too, or a programmer like her dad, or something else entirely, an artist, a doctor, a teacher. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that she does what she loves, and that she's surrounded by people who understand and support her. And that family dinner, now when I remember it, I'm not even angry. I understand my relatives said what they thought. They sincerely worried about me, wanted what was best. They just measured my happiness by their own yardstick. But happiness is individual. For some, it's a big salary and career advancement. For others, family and children. For me, the chance to do what I love every day and know there's someone who completely accepts me And you know what else I've realized over the years? Other people's opinions are just noise. What matters is what you think of yourself and what your closest people think. Everything else is just static. Right now, Dan and I are planning a new project. We want to open a children's floristry school so kids can learn from an early age to see beauty, to create it with their own hands. Maybe it will help them grow up confident, people who aren't afraid to do what they love, no matter what relatives or acquaintances say. And we dream of a second child and a big house with a garden where we can grow flowers for work, and traveling to different countries to see how floristry develops in other cultures. Lots of plans, and they're all connected to flowers, to beauty, to love, for what I do. I remember sitting at that table 5 years ago, feeling like a failure. It seemed like everyone was right, that I really was wasting my time with these little flowers. Now I understand I was right to choose work I loved. Right not to give in to the pressure to go work in a bank or an office. Right to believe in myself, even when no one else did. And most importantly, I was right not to hide my true profession, even when it was awkward, even when they laughed at me, because the truth always wins. Maybe not right away, maybe not how you expect, but it wins. And another important thing, you never know where you'll find your happiness. I met Dan at the job my relatives thought was dead end. If I'd listened to their advice, gone to be a bank teller, would I have met him? Fate is unpredictable, but it always leads you the right way if you don't stray from your own path. And my relatives now consider me the family pride. At every holiday they talk about my achievements, show photos of my work, and I don't hold their old words against them. I understand they loved me even then, they just expressed it differently. Love sometimes takes strange forms. Sometimes it looks like criticism, like trying to talk sense into someone, but deep down, it's always love. The important thing is not to lose yourself under the weight of others' expectations, not to betray your dream for the sake of peace, not to trade happiness for approval, because in the end, you're only left with yourself. And if you're content with yourself, your choices, your life, then everyone else will understand and accept you sooner or later. And if they don't, that's their right. You'll still be happy. That's the story of what happened to me. Simple, really. No supernatural events, no miracles. Just a girl who chose a job she loved, met a good man, and didn't give up under pressure. And it all worked out. Not immediately, not easily, but it worked out. Because if you walk your path honestly, with an open heart, life will reward you. Maybe not how you expected, maybe completely differently, but it will reward you. The important thing is not to turn aside. And to believe in yourself, especially when no one else does. Especially when no one else does. That's all the wisdom I have. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go. Sophie woke up, demanding attention. And then there's lots of work, a big wedding tomorrow, final touches to finish. Life goes on. A beautiful, full, happy life. The kind I wanted. Okay, I won't lie. Sophie didn't wake up. I just wanted a nice ending because this story got pretty long. But life doesn't stop for neat endings, right? Literally the day after I mentally wrapped up this story, the phone rings. An unknown number. Elena Morrison? A woman's voice, excited. This is Anna Volkov, director of the City News channel. May I speak with you? I nearly spilled my coffee. A TV channel? Why do they need a florist? Of course I'm listening. We're preparing a program about successful entrepreneurs in our city. And your story, it's amazing. We'd love to do a feature on your workshop. Turns out, one of my clients told journalists about me. Like, she was just a regular flower seller and now she built a whole network, like some kind of Cinderella. But I wasn't a seller, I corrected. I was always a florist. Oh yes, of course, Anna agreed, but that's not the point. The point is you made it, built an empire from nothing. There it was again. Why did everyone need a rags-to-riches story? Why couldn't they just say, a person did what they loved and succeeded? But I agreed to the filming. I was curious. A film crew arrived, 5 people, cameras, microphones, lights. The workshop felt like a launch pad. My girls Ashley and Marina were wide-eyed, scaring the clients. Elena Morrison, the director said, tell us how it all began. How did you get into the floral business? And I told them, honestly, how I loved flowers since childhood, how I studied floristry, how I worked in the shop. Cut. The director stopped me. Where's the drama? Where's the struggle? What drama? I didn't understand. Well, you surely faced difficulties. Maybe money was tight, or your parents were against it. Oh, if only he knew about that family dinner. But I didn't want to tell them. It wasn't their business how my relatives tried to dissuade me. Sure, there were difficulties, I said vaguely, but nothing major. The director was disappointed. He clearly wanted tears and suffering, but got an ordinary work story. In the end, they made a regular feature. Showed the workshop, a couple of client interviews, me working. It was fine, but without any dramatic effects. A week after the program aired, something interesting happened. Aunt Valerie called me. Lena, I saw you on TV yesterday. You saw Aunt Val? You look so beautiful. And your workshop. Remember how we tried to talk you out of the flower business? Her memory. Before, she claimed she always supported me. I remember, I said. Oh, what fools we were. She laughed. Good thing you didn't listen to us. And you know what? It felt good to hear that. Not because I was proven right, I already knew that, but because Aunt Valerie finally honestly admitted her mistake. No excuses like we wanted the best. Just we were fools, that's all. Honesty is priceless. Then something truly incredible started. After the program, clients tripled. The phone rang off the hook. Workshops were booked months in advance. And notably, people didn't just come for flowers. They wanted the story. They told me their problems, asked for advice, as if I wasn't a florist, but some kind of therapist. Elena Morrison, one client said, you know, I saw you on TV and thought, here's someone who made it. Maybe it's time for me to change something in my life. Turns out she worked as an accountant but dreamed of opening a bakery. She'd taken courses, collected recipes, but couldn't take the leap. What's stopping you? I asked. My husband says it's a whim. Why risk a stable job for something uncertain? A familiar tune. Here. Only my relatives discouraged me. Hers was her husband. What do you think? I think you don't achieve anything without risk, she sighed. But it's scary. Of course it's scary. I was scared too when Dan and I opened the new workshop. What if it didn't work? What if clients didn't come? You know what, I told her, why not start small? Bake cakes at home, sell to friends. See how it goes. Her eyes lit up. That's true. Why rent a cafe right away? You can build it up gradually. She left inspired. A month later, she came back with a huge box of homemade pastries. Thank you, she said. I have 10 regular customers already. Now my husband is the one suggesting we open a cafe. Like that. Sometimes a person just needs someone to say, try it. And there were more and more stories like that. People came for flowers and left with plans for a new life. I realized I was spending half my time not with arrangements, but listening to other people's dreams and doubts. Lena, Dan said to me once, have you thought about becoming a life coach? What kind of coach? I laughed. I love flowers, not fixing people's souls. But you're good at it. Look how many people you've already inspired. He was right. Not on purpose. Just sharing my experience, telling how I dared to do what I love despite all the advice. That's when I got an idea. What if I combined them? Flowers and, well, let's call it inspiration psychology. I started running unusual workshops. Not just how to make a bouquet, but how to find yourself through creativity. Participants first talk about their dreams, then express them through floral arrangements. Sounds weird, right? But it works. A person makes a bouquet and figures themselves out simultaneously. Some realize they want to paint, others that they're tired of office work, others that it's time for a big change. The most memorable participant, Mary Peterson, a retiree, came just for something to do. During the workshop, she realized she'd always dreamed of teaching children. But I'm too old, she sighed. Who needs a teacher at 60? Try, I said. Maybe a school needs an experienced teacher. 6 months later, Mary was working at a school for children with special needs, and happier than ever. Elena Morrison, she said, if it weren't for your flowers, I'd have just sat at home until the end of my days. I still felt like I wasn't doing anything special, just creating an atmosphere where people feel comfortable opening up. Flowers help they relax, inspire. But Dan disagreed. Lena, don't you see you have a gift? You help people find themselves. Dan, don't exaggerate. I'm just sharing my experience. That's exactly it, and it's priceless. Then something truly unbelievable happened. A woman around 45 came in, elegant, expensively dressed, but somehow lost. My name is Irina Vladimirovna, she introduced herself. I'd like to sign up for your workshop. I signed her up, of course. Saturday she came and you could see she was on the verge of a breakdown. It came out during the workshop. She was a top manager at a big company, huge salary, all the perks, but utterly miserable. I wake up every morning thinking, God, please not work, she said, mechanically arranging rose petals. And in the evening I think, made it to tomorrow, good. What would you like to do? I asked. I don't know, she answered honestly. When I was young I dreamed of being a journalist. But my parents said, not serious, you won't earn money. I became an economist. A story painfully familiar. Only flowers were not serious for me. Journalism was for her. What's stopping you from trying now? Oh, how could I? She waved her hand. I'm 45. And quitting such a salary. And besides, who needs a journalist with no experience? Who needs an unhappy top manager? I asked bluntly. She froze, not expecting that question. You know what? I continued. Let's make a composition on the theme, My Dream. And see what comes out. She worked on her bouquet for 2 hours. At first, nervously, jerkily, then calmer. By the end, her face showed such concentration, such engagement. You know, she finally said, I don't remember the last time I was so focused on the process. Usually I'm always thinking about the result, plans, deadlines. Here I just did it and enjoyed it. How did that feel? Amazing, she smiled. I forgot about everything else. You see? Now imagine, what if journalism gave you that same feeling? She left deep in thought. A week later she called. Eleanor Morrison. I signed up for journalism courses, evening classes without quitting my job. 6 months later she brought me her first published article, about the floral business, by the way. It was excellent. It's all thanks to you, she said. Nonsense, I replied. It's thanks to your courage. But she shook her head. No, thanks to you. You showed me it's possible to do what you love and be successful doing it. And then I understood. My story really does inspire people. Not because I'm special, but because I'm ordinary. Just like many others. I just didn't give up. Soon after, an event happened that turned everything upside down. A publishing house from New York called me, Elena Morrison. We'd like to offer you a book deal. What kind of book? I didn't understand. About finding your calling. We've heard about your workshops, how you help people. It's a very relevant topic. I actually laughed. But I'm not a writer or a psychologist. I just love flowers. That's exactly why we want your book, the editor said. Not from a theorist, but from a practitioner. From someone who knows firsthand what it means to follow your own path. I thought long and hard. Writing a book, that's something else entirely. It's responsibility. What if I give bad advice and hurt someone? But Dan talked me into it. Lena, you see how many people are searching for support. Your story could be that support for many. I agreed. But on one condition, I'd write it like I talk, without jargon, without pretending to be academic. Just honestly about how it was. I wrote that book for 3 months. Evenings, after Sophie fell asleep, remembering that family dinner, my doubts, meeting Dan, opening the workshop, and you know what? Writing it, I understood a lot about myself. Turns out, my path wasn't as simple as it seemed. I just didn't focus on the difficulties. I concentrated on the good. The book came out titled Find Your Flowers. Honestly, I thought maybe 200 people would buy it, friends and clients. It became a bestseller. People wrote reviews, told how the book helped them make changes. Some quit hated jobs, some started their own businesses, some just stopped being afraid to dream. And I kept wondering, could my ordinary story really be that important to others? But the most interesting thing happened 6 months after the book came out. A woman called me. Elena Morrison, this is Galina Petrovna. Remember me? I didn't, honestly. I'm your Aunt Gail, she laughed. From New York. Aunt Gail, the very one who said the flower business wasn't serious at that family dinner. Aunt Gail, how are you? Great. Lena, honey, I read your book. And then she said something completely unexpected. You know, I always dreamed of doing crafts too. When I was young, I knitted such beautiful doilies, sewed such lovely blouses, and then life happened, work, family, kids. I gave up. And now I decided to try. Signed up for sewing classes. At 60, can you imagine? I could. And I was sincerely happy for her. Aunt Gail, that's wonderful. Yeah, it is. And you know what's funniest? If someone told me 5 years ago I'd be taking cues from my florist niece, I'd have laughed. Now I think, what a fool I was to try and talk you out of it. What a turn of events. The very Aunt Gail who thought my work was frivolous was now searching for her own calling, taking inspiration from me. Life is a strange thing. You never know what tomorrow will bring. And tomorrow, by the way, is a big day for us. Sophie is taking her first steps. Yesterday, she stood up by the sofa and took 3 whole steps to Daddy. Dan and I were as thrilled as if she'd climbed Everest. So here I sit, looking at my daughter and wonder, what path will she choose? Maybe she'll be a florist too? Or a programmer like her dad? Or something else entirely, an astronaut, a doctor, an artist? The important thing is that she chooses with her heart, and that she's not afraid to follow her own path, even if everyone around her says it's wrong, and I'll be beside her, supporting any choice she makes. Because I know happiness isn't in what others think. Happiness is in doing what you love and being surrounded by people who understand you. Everything else will follow. Okay, I think to myself, now things have definitely settled down. Books out, business is good, daughter's growing. I can relax and live calmly. Yeah, right. Literally, the morning after talking to Aunt Gail, Ashley, my assistant, calls me. Her voice is frantic. Elena Morrison, there are some people here from Japan. They say it's very important to meet with you. From Japan? I couldn't believe my ears. Ashley, are you sure? Yes. They have a translator. It's all official. They said they read your book. I drive to the workshop thinking, what the? I wrote the book in Russian. How did Japanese people find out about it? I arrive, and there are indeed 3 men in sharp suits, one older, grey-haired, distinguished-looking, 2 younger, clearly assistants, and a female translator. Morrison-san, the older man, bows. It is a great pleasure to meet you. My name is Tanaka Hiroshi. Turns out my book had been translated into Japanese, without my knowledge, through the publisher, and it had become popular there. The thing is, Mr. Tanaka explained, through the translator, in Japan, the topic of finding one's ikigai is very relevant now. Ikigai? I repeated. It is a Japanese concept, meaning one's reason for being, what makes life worth living. Your story illustrates very clearly how a person can find their ikigai. Well, I had no idea I was writing about ikigai. I thought I was just talking about flowers. And what do you want? I asked. We would like to invite you to Japan, Tanaka-san said, to conduct a series of workshops. Many Japanese have lost touch with nature, with beauty, and your approach through floristry. It can help people find harmony again. I was stunned. Japan. I'd never even dreamed of going there. But I don't speak Japanese, I objected. No problem. There will be a translator. And besides, the language of flowers is universal, he smiled. I flew home feeling like I was walking on air. Dan met me at the door with Sophie in his arms. What happened? You look ecstatic, I told him. Dan didn't believe it at first, then got excited. Lena, that's fantastic. Do you realize what this means? What exactly? That your idea works not just in America, that it genuinely helps people, regardless of culture. And then it hit me. He was right. It turned out that what I'd intuitively discovered, combining creativity with self-discovery, was something universal. But flying to Japan, that's so far, and Sophie is still little. What if we all go? Dan suggested. I can take vacation time. Seriously? Of course. You think I'd miss seeing my wife conquer Japan? A month later, we were flying to Tokyo. Sophie was great on the plane, only fussed a little during takeoff. I was incredibly nervous. What if it doesn't work? What if the Japanese are disappointed? But when we landed, I was welcomed like family. Tanaka-san himself met us at the airport, brought a car, got us settled in a great hotel. First workshop tomorrow, he said. 50 people signed up. They are all very eager. I didn't sleep that night, preparing, thinking about what to say, what arrangements to make. In the morning, when I walked into the hall, I nearly fainted from surprise. There were completely different people there, young women in kimonos, older men in business suits, housewives, students, and they all looked at me with such expectation. "Welcome to the Find Your Flowers workshop," I began through the translator. And it took off. The first half hour was awkward, say a sentence, wait for the translation, then continue. But I got into the rhythm. I told my story about the family dinner, the relatives who thought flowers weren't serious. The audience listened with such attention. When I got to the part where Dan arrived in the fancy car, a few people even chuckled. "You see," I said, "people's opinions changed not because my work changed. It stayed the same. Their perception of success changed. After the theory, we moved to practice. I handed out materials, showed basic techniques, and then magic happened. An older man in a strict suit suddenly started handling the flowers so carefully, so tenderly. You could see he was completely immersed in the process, forgot about everything else. A young woman was nervous at first, then relaxed and created such an elegant composition that everyone gasped. And one guy turned out to be a programmer. Like Dan, literally glowed with happiness arranging a bouquet of wild grasses. "This is amazing," he told me through the translator. "I'd forgotten what it's like to make something with my hands, unrelated to a computer." At the end of the workshop, participants shared their impressions. And you know what amazed me most? Many said the same thing. For the first time in a long time, I was completely in the moment, not thinking about work, problems, plans. Just here and now. That's the essence of Ikigai. Being fully present in what you're doing. After the first workshop, Tanaka-san was thrilled. Morrison-san, this exceeded all expectations. People were so inspired. The next 2 weeks flew by in an instant. A new workshop every day, new faces, new stories. In Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, everywhere, the same people came tired, stressed, and left with eyes shining. Some remembered childhood dreams, some planned major life changes. I especially remember a woman around 50 in Kyoto. She worked for a big corporation, held a high position, but she seemed gray, as if life had been drained from her. "I work 14 hours a day," she told me. "I have everything, money, status, colleagues, respect. But every morning I wake up thinking, why?" It came out that in her youth she dreamed of being an artist. She even got into art school, but her parents insisted on economics. "It's too late to change anything now," she sighed. "I'm 50. "Who says it's too late?" I asked. "You can become an artist at any age. But how can I quit my job? I have a mortgage, obligations. Who says you have to quit? Start painting in the evenings, on weekends. See what happens." She fell silent, thoughtful. Then she started creating her composition with such focus, as if her life depended on it. The result was an incredibly beautiful bouquet, asymmetrical, bold, completely unlike traditional Japanese style. You could see her soul was in it. "My God," she whispered, "I'd forgotten how wonderful it feels to create something with your own hands." Through the translator, she later said she hadn't felt such satisfaction from a process in many years. "Perhaps you're right," she finally said. "Perhaps I should try painting again." And the next day, she came back with a sketchbook and pencils. "I couldn't sleep all night," she explained. "I was drawing. For the first time in 20 years. She showed me the drawings, real talent. Maybe the technique wasn't perfect, but there was soul, vision." "Morrison-san," she said, "thank you. You helped me remember who I really am. It's encounters like these that make this work special. Not the money, not the fame, but the chance to help someone find themselves." On our last day in Japan, Tanaka-san hosted a farewell dinner. He invited everyone who helped organize the workshops. Morrison-san, he said, raising a glass of sake, in these 2 weeks you changed many lives. That is a great gift. I just shared my experience, I replied. That is the gift. Not everyone can speak so simply and sincerely about important things. Then he said something unexpected. Would you consider writing another book, specifically about ikigai and floristry? I nearly choked on my sake. Another book. I barely managed the first one. Think about it, he said. Your approach could help millions find their path. On the plane home, I thought about his offer. On one hand, tempting, on the other, scary. What if it doesn't work? What if the first book was a fluke? Lena, Dan said, rocking Sophie to sleep, remember how you felt before opening the first workshop? Fear, doubt, and it worked out. It did. So this will too, just right from the heart. At home, a surprise awaited me, a huge stack of letters on the table. Turns out, while we were in Japan, readers of my first book had been writing and writing. Dear Elena Morrison, I read your book and finally decided to start my own business. Thank you. Your story helped me understand I need to do what I love. I'm 60, but after your book, I signed up for photography classes. I read them and cried. Tears of joy. Could my simple story really be that important to people? A week later, Mom called. Lena, honey, the neighbor's reading your book, says it's so interesting. And I told her, that's my daughter. Pride rang in Mom's voice. The same Mom who once worried I wouldn't get married playing with flowers. Mom, remember that family dinner when everyone tried to talk me out of floristry? I remember, she sighed. Fools we were then. Thought we knew better how you should live. Not fools. You just cared in your own way. Lena, honey, Mom said quietly, forgive us. We said all that out of love. Mom, I forgave you long ago. And besides, if it weren't for those doubts, maybe I wouldn't be so sure of my choice now. It's true. Sometimes opposition only strengthens your resolve about the right path. If everyone had supported me right away, maybe I wouldn't have had such inner conviction. The second book was easier to write. I had experience, understood what people needed. It was called Ikigai, in bloom, the Japanese path to yourself. And again, unexpected success, even bigger than the first book. Invitations to TV, magazine interviews, new workshops. Then something truly amazing happened. A publishing house called Elena Morrison. Would you consider writing a monthly column for a magazine about finding your calling? A column in a real glossy magazine. I agreed, of course. Thought I'd write about flowers and careers. It turned out completely different. Every month, I told the story of one person who found their path. An artist who started painting at 50, a teacher who opened a cafe, a programmer who quit to keep bees. And you know what? Readers devoured these stories. They wrote responses, shared their own. It became a whole network of people supporting each other in finding themselves. And business at the workshop kept getting better. Now people came from other cities specifically for workshops. Some for the flowers, some for the inspiration. Ashley and Marina started teaching classes themselves. I taught them not just technique, but how to listen to people, how to help them open up. Elena Morrison, Ashley said once, you know what's most amazing? I don't think we sell flowers. We sell hope. Hope? Yeah. People come in lost. They leave with plans, with dreams. It's like we show them change is possible. It's true. Over the years, hundreds of people have passed through our workshop, and many changed their lives dramatically. Some changed careers, some moved to new cities, some just started spending more time on hobbies. Recently, an incredible thing happened. A man around 40 came in, introduced himself. Igor Petrovich. I've read your books, I'd like to talk. Standard, I thought. He'll tell me about his doubts, we'll find a solution together, but he said, you know, I run a large company. We have 1,000 employees, and I thought, what if we implemented your approach in corporate training? How so? Run workshops for employees, help them find their place in the company, understand what they truly enjoy doing, through creativity, through floristry. The idea seemed interesting. We agreed on a trial workshop, and you know what? It worked. 20 middle managers, each with their own problems and doubts. After 4 hours working with flowers, completely different people. Some realized they wanted to train staff. Others that they were drawn to creative projects. Others just relaxed and stopped seeing work as drudgery. Amazing, Igor Petrovich said after the workshop. It's like people woke up. They have enthusiasm now. Now we regularly run corporate workshops, and the results are impressive. Employee turnover decreased, productivity increased, team atmospheres improved. Turns out the do what you love principle works not just in personal life, but in business too. And the other day, Sophie, who's 2 now, came up to my work table and declared very seriously, "Mommy, I make flowers too. You want to, sweetheart?" "Want. Like you." She took a little rose, tried to put it in a small vase. It was crooked, clumsy, but she tried so hard, her face so focused. "Dan, look, I called my husband. She's following in my footsteps." Dan laughed. "Or maybe she'll be a programmer." "Or a doctor?" "It's too early to tell." "Of course it is. But see how engaged she is. That's what matters." And that really is what matters. It doesn't matter what our daughter ends up doing. What matters is that she grows up in an atmosphere where following your calling is normal, where you're not afraid to dream and make dreams come true. And I keep doing my thing, creating beauty, helping people find themselves, writing books. And every day I thank fate that I didn't listen to my relatives at that memorable family dinner, because if I had, none of this would exist. No workshop, no books, no trip to Japan, no meetings with amazing people, no this full, vibrant, happy life. And tomorrow there's another workshop. New people will come with their stories, doubts, dreams, and I'll tell them again about flowers and how important it is to listen to your heart, because that's the only thing I know how to do really well, and the only thing I truly love doing. And you know what? That's enough for happiness.